All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the OpenText Live webinar series. My name is Gretchen Wurgis. I'm the Senior Partner Training Manager for the OpenText Global Partner Program. And this version of our OT Live sessions are an opportunity for our trusted and valuable partners to co-present with us and to present you solutions based in the OpenText portfolio and to bring you some exciting demonstrations and information related to some things that are available for you. And with that, today's presenter from our partner community will be from CASIA, the content management group. And I wanted to just first, before we get started with the presentation, take a moment for some housekeeping stuff. If you do have a question at any time during the presentation, you can put your question in two different places. You have one option which would be the chat, which is the little chat bubble at the bottom corner of your screen. If you put your question there, it will be private and will come just to me. If you put it in the Q&A panel, which is also at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, it will be public, so you have your choice there. But either way, no matter where you put your question, at the end of the presentation, we will have gathered all of your questions and we will ask them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. I also want to let you know that we do record every webinar in our OpenText Live webinar series. If you would like to refer back to the recording within the next 48 hours, we will have it posted and it will be on our opentext.com/events page. And there you will be able to see all of our upcoming events. And there are two tabs. There's the upcoming and then there's another one that says recorded. That's where this will go into our historical listing of webinars. And if you are curious about what we've done in the past, you can go there and check out other recordings. You can also see what's coming up for us in the series. All right, and without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Sean Murphy.
Thank you, Gretchen. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name, again, is Sean Murphy. I'm the Sales Director for CASIA Content Management. We are an OpenText global technology partner based here in Ottawa, Canada. And we are a software development company that focuses on enhancing the feature set of OpenText Content Suite. We do this by extending or adding new content server features. We streamline business processes, facilitate user adoption by making it easier to use, and overall just maximizing your return on investment in your OpenText software. Our company was founded in 2011 by 3 partners, all of who are ex-OpenText developers. And out of the formation of CASIA, several enhancement modules for Content Server were developed, including our records management add-on featured module that we're going to look at today. Presenting today is one of the founding partners, Robert Burnett. He's a renowned implementer of OpenText Content Server records management systems. He has over 2 decades of experience acting as a lead consultant on a variety of projects spanning a wide range of industries, including financial institutions, oil and gas, government, and high tech. So this morning, Rob will be showcasing our Records Disposition Approval, or RDA, module for OpenText Content Suite. RDA was really built to make it easier for content server users to sign off on records, as well as to reduce the time it takes for records managers to process these records once they've received the approvals. And today we're going to demonstrate several features and benefits of RDA, including our simplified sign-off process for approvers, our simplified records disposition support, our simplified review process, and RDA's integrated reporting framework. Again, we will have some Q&A at the end of the demonstration. But should you have any questions that aren't addressed after the demo, please feel free to contact me at sean.murphy@casiacm.com, and I will be able to address any of your questions. Okay, so let's dive right into RDA, and I'll pass the ball over to Rob. Rob, let's see what this is all about.
Thanks, Sean, and welcome everyone. Looking through the attendee list to see a lot of familiar names out there, so hello again. It really kind of hit home when Sean said that I had over 2 decades of experience. It really makes me feel old, but it is accurate. I'm on my 21st year of implementing records management systems specifically in Content Server. And with those over 2 decades, if I sometimes slip and call Content Server Live Link, that's just me showing my age. So I'll sometimes slip into using the word Live Link. Or even if we have any Government of Canada people on the call, I may even refer to it as GC Docs, as that's what the Government of Canada likes to call Content Server. Okay, so we're going to dive right into the demo. And before I do that, I'm just going to show you how I've set up my information model because it'll be pertinent on how we use that information in building an RDA package. So this demo is going to be simulating running a disposition search and performing a review process on finance documents. And I am going to share my screen so that it'll make a little bit more sense. There we go. So I'm in a finance department folder, and I have it broken up into 2 units, accounts payable and accounts receivable. And so when we navigate into one of these folders, we see that I have a folder structure broken up by company name, and then within each company name, I have both electronic document and physical objects. Now, down the folder structure, I'm actually inheriting some metadata through the categories and attributes. So just to show you what information we're capturing there, I'll go to my categories tab. And we can see we have 3 categories that I'm capturing. I'm capturing my company name. In the department attribute, I am capturing my department. And then I'm also using a category to capture 3 approvers that need to be reviewing an RDA package for these records. So my primary, secondary, and tertiary approvers. And I've identified them all as being groups. And it's a similar structure through the accounts receivable structure, folder structure as well. So under AR, we have our folders broken out by companies, and then the same metadata captured on those as well. Okay, so now we're going to start doing RDA stuff. So with my over 20 years of experience implementing records management systems in Content Server, way back when it was called LiveLink, I worked with a lot of customers developing their disposition approval processes using different type of reportings where sometimes we had to print it off, and then they would get wet signatures, and they would have to reconcile that back into Content Server. So it was a really laborious and very tedious process to accomplish that task. So over the years, I kind of visualized how best we can help the records managers get the sign-off for these records, as well as helping the end users to get through the process of approving their documents in a timely manner. Because if there's any records managers on the call, you probably know that getting your end users to approve records can be a bit of a challenge. So RDA kind of works in that vein in that it is trying to help them to speed up the process and therefore making it a little bit less tedious for them. So the first step in using RDA is that we have to run a disposition search. So RDA does not take over the disposition search process of Content Server. Content Server is very well recognized as one of the leading records management software tools out there, and we are not trying to replace that. What we will simply do is just use the result set after we do our disposition search. So I have a disposition search already created. So it's called Finance Disposition Search. I'll go in here, and we have a snapshot from a little bit earlier this morning, and I have a total of 95 records that came in this snapshot. So at this point, it is still pure out-of-the-box records management. We have our red and yellow bars up top indicating that nothing has been actioned, and we have everything still pending for review. So now that we have a disposition search performed, we want to build an RDA package. Now, this disposition search encompasses both the accounts payable and the accounts receivable records. But the sign-off authorities, or sometimes also referred to as an OPI, which is the Office of Primary Interest, is different. So the people who need to sign off on accounts receivable is different than the people that need to sign off on the accounts payable. So we don't want to create one package and send it out to everybody. We want to slice and dice this package up so that we get the records sent to the appropriate people and nothing more. So what I'll walk you through is a very manual process of creating these RDA Disposition Approval packages. But in the end, I'm going to show you how we can actually automate it all. If we jump right into the automation of all, you know, the magic would happen and you really wouldn't know what's happening in the background. So I like walking through the manual process first, just to show you what happens in the background when you automate the RDA process. So I'm going to create an RDA package. So I'm going to go to my RDA workspace, and I'm top right, I'll choose Add New, and I'm creating an RDA. So I'll call this one Finance, and I'm going to do one for my accounts payable. And so I'll give it Finance AP. I'll choose my Disposition Search, and because I only have one snapshot in there, it pre-selects it for me. So I'll go ahead and click Create. So at this point, RDA is sucking in the entire result set of your disposition search. So that was a total of 95 records. And so I'll kind of work down from the top of the screen down and let you know the components of building this package. So you'll see at the very top the disposition search and snapshot that was used to build this package. We indicate that the workflow status is pending. In the documentation and in some screens, you'll hear the word workflow. We are not actually using any type of workflow engine in the background. This is all just database driven. It's simply meant to represent a business process that's being followed. It indicates that we currently have all 95 items in my report and we haven't excluded any. It gives me my name, and we have the number of days to complete the approval process is 30 days. So this is a configuration default that I have set up of 30 days, so you can have it set to whatever value your organization needs. The next is the instruction area. So the instruction area is exactly that. It's instructions that get sent along with the work package to the approvers so that you can explain what they're doing or why they're doing it. And this text box supports something called Markdown, which is kind of like a simple way to add HTML formatting to text. So in my sample instructions, which is a default configuration again, I put a double asterisk around 30 days, and the double asterisk makes that turn bold when we look at it. A single asterisk makes bulleted lists, and the angled brackets will make that a hyperlink. So it allows you, for example, in this example, if you need to link to your retention policies or your classification manuals, you can do that in this instruction box. The next component of building the package is we have a feature called Security Override. So this is a great feature to ensure that all of your approvers have access to view the records when they become approvers. A good example is maybe there's a scenario where you have your legal department is always the final sign-off for the destruction of a record. So does that mean they need to have permission throughout your entire enterprise workspace to do their daily job? Probably not. So you could actually build your permission model in Content Server to only give them access to the documents they need and not every other business unit across your organization. With this security override selected, what will happen is when that legal user becomes the approver, we will check to see if they have CC contents on the object, and if not, we will temporarily grant them the permission to CC contents in order for them to do their approval process. Because the standard disposition review process out of the box, and like RDA, we have to abide by your content server permissions. So this will ensure that the people you choose can actually see the objects that you need them to approve or reject. Okay, the next section is our approvers. So this is a nice little bit of eye candy, I like to call it. So through my years of working with the product, I like to try to streamline as much as possible the input of data to make it as user-friendly for records managers and the end users. And this is the first instance of that. So RDA supports 1 to 101 to 1001 level of approvers. So there's actually no limit. Using the out-of-the-box functionality, there are two components to it. you can have 2 levels of approvers that are configurable, and then if you need more than 2 levels, you're going to have to build a workflow. So with RDA, no workflows are required. You simply just enter in the number of approvers that you need. So, and the way we do that is you just start typing, and we'll do a dynamic lookup where we can start entering users' names, group names, and it just goes ahead, looks up in your user list. And so we are doing an AP here, so I'll choose the OPI for that. So as you can see, we have unlimited number of approvers here in our RDA work package. And RDA is a serial approval process, so the order in which we add these users is important. So if you accidentally added them in the wrong order, you can actually just drag these guys around to do a different order if that's necessary. So I'm going to set up a 3-level approvers for my AP records, so I'll get rid of those guys, and that is how I believe my metadata is set up. So my OPI is going to be my first approver, my finance VP role group is going to be my second, and my legal approvers is going to be my third. Now we have another field here called Conditional Approvers. We won't use this field in this example, but it's essentially there where, let's say if you have certain classifications that you want to have a additional layer of approver, then we can configure that in the system that will automatically attach on this approver when we find records that have that higher risk classification. We have the ability to auto-process items. So when a RDA package is completed, we can actually kick off the default process of the records in Content Server, but we won't do that because we won't. I need the records to demonstrate at the end of this process again. And next, we have the ability to customize your interface a little bit. So once we initiate this package, you're going to see that we have buttons for the end users to approve and reject the items. So the default names of those buttons is called Approve for Destruction, Reject, and Extend. But disposition doesn't always mean destroy. It could mean that it is you want to move items into an archive, for example. So we allow you to customize the interface to better reflect what your disposition is actually doing. Hard coding in there to say Approve for Destruction when it was actually going to be archived could be very confusing for the end user. So this allows you to reduce that confusion and be very explicit in what you want your end users to approve or reject. So for example, instead of the default of reject and extend, I will just call it reject destruction, and I will leave the Approve for Destruction default value there. And I'll go ahead and I'll save my change. Okay, great. So next up is where we need to start slicing and dicing. So again, the Disposition Search returned both accounts receivable and accounts payable records. And I am building a package just for my accounts payable. So I need to get rid of the accounts receivable records from my 95 items. So we can actually use, because I have metadata on my documents, I can actually use Facets on the left-hand side here to identify my accounts receivable and exclude them from my package. And these Facets work a little bit different than the Facets that you get out of a box with Content Server. So with Content Server, you create your facet, then you have to add it to a facet tree, and then you tell Content Server where that facet tree, where you want it to display. The facets for RDA is you build a normal Content Server facet, but you don't have to add it to a tree if you don't want to, and you don't have to say where it's going to be used. It simply is built dynamically based on the records that are returned. So for example, we have a facet here for physical item type. So if we didn't have any physical items, then this facet would not be displayed because RDA knows that that is an irrelevant facet to be displayed. So what I'm going to do is I need to pull out my accounts receivable. So I'm going to my department facet, and I'm going to click on accounts receivable. So there are 45. I'll click on that facet. So RDA will filter down to 45 items. and I am going to select at the top to select them all. And because there's only 25 items on this page out of 45, RDA says, you know, do you want to select all 45? And yes, I do. So I've now selected all 45 items, and I can exclude it. And now what I've done is I've pulled out all of my accounts receivable records, and what I have left is simply 50 report items that pertain to my accounts payable approvers. And the 45 that was excluded was my accounts receivable. So what I'm going to do is, after that, I'm just going to go ahead and initiate the sign-off process. And when I do, we'll head back to the RDA workspace, and we see that the Pending RDA tab is now located in Initiated. And this is a tab where the records managers can see which RDA packages are still out there being reviewed or ready for them to take action. So before I move on to what it looks like for an approver, I'm actually going to build one more package for my accounts receivables. So I'm going to go over here to my pending RDAs. I'm going to add new. I'm going to call this one my Finance AR. I'm going to choose the exact same disposition search and the exact same snapshot and click Create. And so this time, though, when RDA sucks in the results, we notice down here at the bottom that the report items is now 45, and we already have 50 excluded. And so what RDA notices is that, hey, you already have 50 of those records from that disposition search already out in an RDA package. So we're not going to let you try to build another package with the same records. So we're going to exclude them for you. And so when we go to the Excluded Items tab, you can see that they already are in active RDA called Finance AP. So the reason why we do that is we don't want to get conflicting approval states back from different users. Okay, I won't go ahead and initiate this one because we'll use our accounts payable. It has been initiated, and I'll check my initiated tab, and it is sitting with the current approver, who is the accounts payable OPI. So I'll go ahead and I'll log in as that user, and we'll take a look at what that looks like for them. So user 01, I believe, is my accounts payable, so I'll sign in as them. Now, because it was assigned to a group, every member of that group is going to receive an email letting them know that an RDA package has been assigned to them. And there'll be a link to the RDA package. Through the standard interface, they can get to that area by going to their personal drop-down menu. And in there will be a Records Disposition Approval entry. And so this is where they will see all the RDA packages that have been assigned to them. So for this user, we can see that we have that AP RDA and that we have a total of 50 items that we need to review. So we'll just go ahead and click into it. And again, because this has been assigned to a group of users, we're going to get this prompt at the top of the screen, which informs me that the package has been offered to a group of users, and it requires a member to accept it. So basically, if you're familiar with workflow in Content Server, it's kind of like a member accept stage. In other words, one person of that group is going to have to accept the responsibility of becoming the approver. Now, we do, once you clear that text box, prompt box, you can look at the records. So you may go, oh, you know what, I may leave it for someone else to take over. But if you are comfortable working on it, you can go ahead and accept RDA. And then we'll refresh the screen and up pops a bunch of check boxes and some buttons that we'll be able to use. So we'll get to those in a minute. So if you remember, when we were configuring the RDA work package, there was an instruction box. So here's the instructions that got sent along with the package, letting the user know what they need to do and with the links to their retention policy and classification module. And it tells them the number of records that they have and the progress of their approvals. So initially, all 50 items are going to enter into the Pending Items tab because they have not provided their approval or rejection on the items. And also, if you remember, we renamed the Reject button to, instead of Reject and Extend, to just reject destruction. And so here's where that's coming through. We have a tab called Reject Destruction and a button called Reject Destruction. So this is where your buttons and tabs get customized based on the type of disposition search that you're running. So at this point, it's really easy for the end user. You know, if the information on the screen is enough for that user to go ahead and make a decision on these records, it is as simple as putting a checkbox and clicking on Approve for Destruction, and we'll move the item from your Pending Items tab to your Approve for Destruction tab. So as you work through these, your pending items get lower and lower and lower. So this is a really good feature that allows you to walk away from your desk and come back and know exactly where you've left off and how much more approvals that you have to work through. Now, just like when we were building it, we have these facets, which again are built dynamically based on the records in the RDA. So we can go ahead and say, okay, you know, maybe we know that Acme Corp, we can approve all of those, so we'll filter on that. We'll go ahead, select them all, bulk approve, and all the items are moved from my pending to my approve, and then we will clear the items and come back with the rest of the 43 items that we need to work on. Similarly, we can filter on items if we want to reject. So, you know, Stark Industries, maybe they still haven't figured out their legal obligations after the Sokovia incident. So, you know, we can go ahead and we are going to say, you know what, maybe there's a legal hold still outstanding for those guys, so we're going to click the reject. And we're going to get a little prompt here, because we've configured RDA to force the user to choose a reason why they want to reject the destruction of this record. So I have two options configured, which is a legal hold and wrong classification. So I'll just go ahead and click legal hold, and it's optional if they want to put a comment in here, so I'll just go ahead and reject. And then so those items are then moved from my pending over to my reject destruction tab. Now, a lot of times, the information that is displayed on the screen is not enough for an approver to come to a complete and confident decision whether the record should be destroyed or not. So rather than having the user click around through all the property tabs of the record, trying to look at the categories and the record details and the general tab, we've incorporated a more simplistic view to minimize all that clicking that would be involved. And so we use the more information icon for that. So an end user can click on this icon, and we're going to pop open a little box here. And I'll move that to the center of my screen. And we are summarizing a bunch of the information that they would normally click around. So we have the name of the object. I find location is always very good because it provides a lot of context about the document. We have some records detail information shown on this screen, as well as the description. Well, what about the category information? So if we click on this categories link, we're going to pop open another box, and we're going to show you the categories that are applied on that record. And you notice that it's flattened, so we don't have to click on each category to view the attributes within that category. So at the beginning, I showed you the categories applied. There was a category name, department, and disposition approvers. So those were all the categories applied to that record. And I see them now all flattened in one screen. What about my specific information? So probably not too important for electronic documents, but we do have physical in here. So physical items, specific tab contains some important information, so I can click on that, as well as my records detail. When I click on that link, I'm going to get my fourth window open. So at this point, I have 4 windows open that is summarizing basically all of the important metadata that I may need to consume in order to make a good decision on this record. And so it's very easily laid out in one screen. It's even better if you have a couple of screens where you can really expand these windows. But at this point, all the user needs to do is use these buttons in the main screen to approve or reject it. So I'm going to approve this one. So we're approving Cyberdyne Contract 193, and I will approve it. And if we keep an eye on the windows, you'll notice that every single window is going to be dynamically updated with the next record to be approved. So now we're doing 193-B. If I approve again, all the windows again get updated with the next record we need to approve, which is an Excel document called Historical Contracts. So we've now reduced the approval process and digestion information into one button click. And we can reject here as well. So if we wanted to reject the historical contracts, we can go ahead, put a legal hold on it, reject it, and all the windows are refreshed. So at this point, the user just can sit here, click approve, reject, and work through their record. So in the background, what is happening is we're actually moving these records into the appropriate tab as they approved or rejected in that more information window. Okay, another reality of getting your approvers to sign off on the information is sometimes they aren't very confident on whether things can be approved or not. And so RDA incorporates an ability to request feedback. So, maybe we are unsure if all of our Dunder Mifflin records can be destroyed, and we want to get some feedback from some coworkers. So I've selected my Dunder Mifflin records. I'm going to click my request feedback. And similar to when I was building my RDAs, you can just start typing these in, and maybe I'll choose user 2, and I'll choose user 4, and I'll click OK. And we'll take those items from my pending and put them into my feedback request. Now the feedback request, for the interest of time, I won't show you how a user does it, but it's exactly the same interface. They get an email informing them that there's been a feedback request. They will see all of these records in these exact same screens. The only difference is that they do not have the ability to assign more feedback users. So that is the only interface difference. And when the feedback is received by this user, expanding the table row, you can actually see the recommendation by the approver so that you can take action on it. So if both of these approvers said reject, it is still up to the primary approver to provide their opinion. So that he can overrule it if they needed it. So I'll just go ahead and I'll move all of these to reject or legal hold, and we'll take them out of the feedback request and put them into the reject instruction. Okay, great. So we have 24 more items. I'm just going to go ahead and bulk apply them, bulk approve them all, and so we can send it on to the next approver. So I'll go ahead, click approve. So it prompts me, do I want to mark as complete? If I click no, it doesn't submit the RDA package. So if you want a day or two to sleep on it, to come back and rethink your approvals, you can go ahead and do that. But once you are sure, you can click on the disposition completed, and it will forward on the RDA to the next approver. So I believe we had the VP of Finance group as our configured secondary approver. So I'll go ahead and I'll log in as that user. So that is user 03. And so just like the first approver, I would have gotten an email with a link to my RDAs, and here it is. So I enter my RDA work package. The same instructions will be displayed to this user. And again, because it's been assigned to a group, I get the same prompt. And I will just go ahead and accept my RDA. Now, one difference we'll notice, because I am the secondary approver, my pending items is 0. So the 33 that were approved from my previous approver is already approved, and the 17 that were rejected are already sitting in my rejected tab. And the reason for that is we have a configuration option in RDA that allows you to maintain the approval state when it gets forwarded on to the next user. With that enabled, you get this result screen. If it was disabled, all of the items would be back to pending, but the user could still see what the previous approver had chosen on the record. And we do this, or this feature was created so that the secondary and third level approvers may not necessarily have to spend as much time to go through these records knowing that someone has already spent the time to verify that they can be approved or rejected. So it may be almost as much as a rubber stamp to just come in here, click the disposition completed, and it gets forwarded on. So because we have one more level of approvers, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to assume all the approve and rejects are correct and click on disposition complete, and it is going to be forwarded on to my third level approver. And actually, before I do, I won't actually show that because it looks exactly like the same screen. I'm going to log in as my records manager, and we're going to take a look at the RDA package. So I'll go to my RDA workspace, and I see in my initiated tab, it is now setting with my legal approvers. And so we also have the ability as a records manager to force the approval of these records if we needed it. So rather than going through the approval process for that third level of legal approvers, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up here to my function menu, and I'm going to force approve for my legal approver. And so I'm going to get a little prompt here letting you know that any of the outstanding records for this RDA will be approved. And so when I force approve it, my RDA package enters something we call a ready for processing state. And so when I go back into it, you notice that our approvers, we indicate that the legal approver group, it was forced by the records manager. So everything we do with RDA is strictly audited. When you request feedback from a user, we capture the fact that you requested that feedback, and we capture the fact that feedback user may have chosen approve or rejected, and we capture the fact whether you listen to them or not. So everything that you do for this RDA is completely auditable. So this package is now what we call ready for processing. And so processing, again, can mean a lot of things in disposition searches. So we have 33 items. And so if we go to our approved for destruction, we allow you to take action directly through the RDA. So you know, if this was approved for archival and it meant you just needed to change a disposition or an RM status field, you can actually update the metadata right through RDA. You can actually move them. So maybe you had a disposition process where you had to move it to a different location in Content Server. You can do that through RDA as well. For destructions, a lot of the times if it is rejected for some reason, usually there's a legal hold that needs to be applied. So again, right through RDA, you can select your records and apply holds right there. So it really streamlines the ability to update your records and take action on them. So the last step for a records manager now, assuming that this was an actual destruction, RDA, is we need to kind of hand it back off to Content Server. And so the way we do that is we need to head back to our snapshot. So I'll jump to it by using the links at the top of the page. And here we are back at the snapshot. So if you remember the snapshot, when we first looked at it, you had the two bars, the red and yellow bars. So we've replaced that with our text box here that shows you that two RDA packages have been built off of this disposition search. And you notice that only one of them has a checkbox. And that's because that is the one that is ready for processing. So for a records manager, all they need to do at this point is click on the checkbox. And what we'll do is we'll suck in the approval states into the disposition search. And all they would need to do is click on perform actions, and it would perform whatever the RSI action is on the approved record. So here we go. We see all the Acme ones have been approved. And there we go with the first Cyberdyne one we can see here was rejected. And we also prevent people from accidentally selecting any of these checkboxes because it may be out in an RDA that you're still waiting for feedback on. So again, this is the last step. You click Perform Actions, the records are destroyed, and the RDA package is complete. So as I mentioned, that's kind of the manual process, and it took me probably about 25 minutes or so to walk through it. And so what I want to do now is kind of show you how we can automate all of this for you. So the first things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to clear up my RDAs. So I'm going to my initiated RDA, and I'm going to recall it. So we have the ability to recall. You would use this if you've sent it to the wrong people, or for you've excluded some records by accident, and you actually just want to recall it and make some more changes before sending it back out. So it takes it from initiated back to my pending, and I'm going to go ahead and delete my 2 packages. Okay, so how do we automate this? So first, a little history of how the automation of RDA came to be is that we worked with a customer of ours who's one of the largest organizations in the U.S. Enormous amount of employees, tens of thousands of employees, I think even as high as 100,000, with only a handful of records managers. So we're talking like 3 or 4 records managers to support all of those users. So realistically, there is no way for them to, build these RDA packages manually, go in, click the checkbox, and perform actions on the records once they were approved. So we incorporated this automation process into RDA. So if we go to the Disposition Search, on the Disposition Search object, we have a new tab called RDA Disposition Review. And in here is where we can start configuring it, how to build RDA packages automatically for us. So I'm going to turn on auto-generate, and so that's going to generate the packages for us. The package name prefix is going to be finance. I want it to be auto-initiated, so it means when it builds it, automatically send it out to my approvers. Include the security override feature. And this is how we're going to build our approvers. So we are actually going to dynamically build the packages based on the metadata that is attached to my record. So if you remember, we had the primary, secondary, tertiary approvers as attributes on my document. So again, because these are serial review process, the order top-down is important. So we want the primary first and the tertiary last. And so what RDA will do is when we kick off this disposition search, it will analyze the records. It will generate the unique package of records that uniquely represent the set of approvers that should work on those packages. Again, basically doing the slicing and dicing for us. So now that I have that built, all I need to do is come over here to my finance disposition search. And actually, before I do that, I'll just show you. I'm going to clear up my snapshot, and then we'll kick off the new search. So I'll just click on my refresh. So you notice we have the same 95 records that got returned. That's great. And by this time, we go over to our RDA workspace. We have 2 RDA packages already initiated for us. So if we go in there, we see that 2 packages have been built. And if we look over to the right, we can see that the current approver, one of them is my accounts receivable, and the other one is accounts payable. So it actually identified the correct records for the correct approvers and built the packages for us. So when you combine this with scheduled disposition searches and automated RDA packages, it actually runs, Content Server will run your disposition search automatically. RDA packages will automatically be sent out for approval. And then with the auto process, when the packages are received, it will automatically process those documents. So that is how our customers actually completely automating their disposition review cycle. Now, one last little neat thing I want to show you about what RDA can do, and there's actually a lot more that we don't have time to cover. But in our disposition search, you notice that we have 95 records returned. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add some new records. So under my finance department, under accounts receivable, maybe I'm going to have some new records. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mock up a scenario in which, let's say you schedule your disposition searches to run every quarter. But your approvals coming back take longer than a quarter to come back. So you don't want, if your disposition kicks off every quarter, you don't want the same records coming back over and over again, the same 95 records coming back next quarter simply because you haven't received approval for them. So what I'm going to simulate here is, by adding a new company, is that I'm going to simulate that next quarter some more records comes up for disposition using the same disposition search. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add some test documents, load them up. And so typically what happens, or if I were to run a disposition search right now, the same 95 documents would be returned as well as my new 4 documents. But with RDA enabled, we have a configuration and setting in there that allows you to not return any objects that are currently sent out in an RDA. So kicking off this disposition search, I have multiple snapshots turned on. When I do a refresh, I'm only getting my 4 objects that are new to the system. And in fact, if we look at that snapshot, because I have it pre-built or configured to build my RDA packages, you can see that it actually built my package and assigned it to my accounts receivable people automatically. So this is a really great feature where you can prevent having the same records returned over and over again. So that's pretty much getting to the end of the demo. As I had mentioned, RDA there's a lot more components to RDA than what we have time for. There's a lot of configurations that you can turn on. We have something that's built in called a transitory record notification, which is similar to an RDA, but essentially is used for identification of transitory records to let the users know that, hey, you got to either delete these manually or RDA will delete it for you. So I think at this point, Sean, if any questions have come up, we can go ahead and answer any of them.
All right, great. I do have some questions, and I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can either put it into the chat or you can put it into the Q&A panel at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. All right, let's take a look at the questions that we had come in. Give me one moment here. Okay, in audit reporting, can we keep the information for a year for auditing purposes?
Yes, so that's a great question. So in the scenario where we had RDA work, destruction RDA, and if we process the records that actually destroys the records, RDA takes a copy of the metadata that you are able to report on. And so that metadata is actually there until you delete the RDA work package. So after processing, you can move it into the completed tab to kind of keep it separate. But then you could run a report that so we do provide a report out of the box, or you could write your own web reports, for example, that extracts all that information, and then you drop it into Content Server with a 1-year retention on it.
Okay, next question. Can we have category/attribute as a reviewer while creating RDA package? Do we need to clarify that one?
Yeah, I think we need some clarification. So I did have on my records a attribute identifying my approvers. But yeah, we need some clarification on that.
Okay. If that person could also put a follow-up question, that would be great, and we'll move on in the meantime. During review, can the reviewer collect records?
Sorry, what was that question?
During review, can the reviewer collect the records?
No, so we don't have a collection button available. but you know, the whole premise of RDA was built off of user requirements. So it would be not a big ask to include in that drop-down where you could take actions on your records to have a collect button there, or even in the approver state, have a little button there to collect for sure.
How are the approver's attributes populated on the document?
So we assigned a, so I'm assuming this was related to the security override to ensure that they have QC contents permission. So we actually create a temporary RDA group. So when they don't have permission, you will notice a new group on the ACL list, and they will be a member of that group. And the name of that RDA group is representative of the unique identifier for the RDA package.
Great question. How are the approvers at wait, you said that, sorry. Do we get a I'm sorry, I keep starting to read before I see what it says. For the person that asked if you will get a copy of the presentation, we will post all of the resources on that historical tab at opentext.com/events. Let's see here. RDA package is additional to purchase, or is it in the new version of CS16?
It's a new package.
Okay. Waiting to see if we have any other questions. That's all I have right now. And again, a reminder, if you do have a question, once we've concluded, I'm sure they will share their contact information, but you can always contact us at partners@opentext.com, and we'll be sure to get that question answered for you, even if it's a week from now, if you think of something that you are curious about. All right, let's see. Yep, I think that's it. So if you guys would like to say something to conclude.
Great. So before I hand it back to Sean, I just want to thank everybody for their time. I hope you found the demonstration interesting and some value. So thanks again. Over to you, Sean.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. There is some information on our website as well at cassiuscm.com. And again, if we didn't address any of your questions here, please feel free to contact me directly. I can answer any questions. I can give you pricing information. And we do have a trial of our project as well if you wanted to test in your test environment. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.